Drishti or planetary aspects are another important factor when it comes to astrology and Jyotisha. What is a planetary aspect? Well, let us go back in time a bit into the 16th and 17th century by looking at the work of one of the key figures of that time, the father of modern astronomy, the scientific method, natural and modern science, Johannes Kepler, who was also a mathematician, natural philosopher who wrote on music as well, an all-round polymath who also published a science fiction novel. Kepler lived in a period where astronomy and astrology were one. Astronomy was the mathematical branch and the liberal arts. Physics was the clear distinction between these two worlds. Kepler introduced the concept of celestial physics, contributing to Aristotle's metaphysics and on the heavens. Kepler was most famous for his work on the laws of planetary motion, which even inspired Sir Isaac Newton in developing the theory of universal gravitation. Kepler also did incredible and groundbreaking work in the field of optics, getting the title of being the father of modern optics, inventing and improving the version of the refracting telescope, which is still used today by modern astronomers. Johannes Kepler's book, Mysterium Cosmographicum, or The Sacred Mystery of the Cosmos, published in 1596, proposed that the planets and the relationship they had with one another could be understood by looking into the famous Platonic solids, that the planets were enclosed within a sphere that represented the orbit of Saturn. This was before the discovery of the other outer planets. Copernicus and his heliocentric model theory is what this book mainly explains. That there is a divine structure to this universe which God planned out through the knowledge of geometry and assigned the Platonic sonnets to dictate this structure. Kepler had very strong theological convictions of the connection between the physical and the spiritual. This conviction is what drove his relentless search for cosmic meaning. After working endlessly with the three-dimensional polyhedron, he found the Platonic solids could be inscribed by spherical orbs and thus developing the Platonic solid model of the solar system. In his book, Harmonicae Mundi, or Harmony of the Worlds, Kepler described 13 aspects, with some being major and significant, which is what we will be focusing on in our study. Aspects, like any other study of astrology, have many layers and depth. For now, we will focus on looking at the basic aspects without going into all the calculations and the finer nuances of degrees and midpoints. Each zodiac sign is approximately 30 degrees. 12 zodiac signs of 30 degrees each give us a 36-degree map. The main aspects we use are conjunctions, when the planets are together from the observer's point of view, not together in space, but they might share the same ecliptic longitude or right ascension at the time of observation. The technicalities of these calculations will not be discussed now. We want to grasp the main concepts first. This is how a conjunction would look like in our astrological chart. We will use the planet Saturn and the Moon for our examples. The planets would be in one house together. The next aspect we have is the opposition. As the name suggests, these planets are 180 degrees away from each other, or observed to be on either side of the celestial sphere. This is how an opposition would look like from our chart. And we usually say the planets are 7 houses away from each other. Then we get to the trine, which is 120 degrees away, creating the tricorner effect of 1, 5, and 9, as seen from the chart. Then we get the square aspect, which forms a square creating 90-degree angles, creating the Kendra effect. The planets can be said to be 4 houses away or 10 houses away. The sextile is a 60-degree distance or 3 houses away from the house observed. The sextile is also from the first house all the way to the 11th house. Then we get the semi-sextile or the second house aspect, simply looking at the house adjacent to the house observed. We also call this the 2-12 relationship. Then there is the quincunx, which forms the 6-8 relation from the first house or any house observed. Now that we understand the physical relationship of the aspects, let us look into the metaphysical properties and the significance of the planetary relationships. Even in ancient times, the old astronomers and astrologers treated conjunctions and aspects as spiritual omens of things to come into our world. Even in the personal horoscope, the planetary aspects hold a huge significance for creating a certain rhythm and energy of the entire chart. First, we need to learn a few rules about the planetary aspects. First rule to learn is that all the planets create a 7th aspect. Each planet will aspect the house directly opposite the house it is placed in. This is the first thing to know. Now, there are planets that have special aspects. Those planets are Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. I was asking myself, why only these 3 planets? Then I probably thought they are creating a larger orbit than our Earth. Mars will aspect 4 houses and 8 houses away from itself. The effect of these aspects will depend on many factors, such as the strength of Mars, if Mars is a functional benefic or a functional malefic for that ascendant chart, and the exact degrees that the aspect happens. Mars is a natural malefic planet, so in theory, the aspects of Mars have been seen to be met with difficulty, and many astrologers express this. Mars can also act as a protector of the area it aspects if Mars is a positive planet for the chart. The square aspect formed by other planetary combinations thus is also seen as a negative aspect among many learned astrologers. Although, like with anything, the entire horoscope has to be analyzed to determine the quality and outcomes of any aspect. Jupiter aspects the 5th house and the 9th house away from itself. Jupiter is always considered the great benefic, so anything which is aspected by Jupiter is considered auspicious. If Jupiter is a functional malefic, the aspect does not harm the area, although the aspect will not do much to strengthen the house or planet aspected by this functional malefic Jupiter. So obviously the qualities of Jupiter will be upon the area aspected. Growth, knowledge, wealth, divine guidance will be felt from the aspects of Jupiter. Saturn has the special aspect of the 3rd and the 10th. Again, theoretically speaking, Saturn is a natural malefic, so these aspects will bring with them the qualities of Saturn, the difficulty, delay, and struggle we have come to associate Saturn with. When Saturn is a functional benefic for the chart, the aspects will serve as a place of mastery. Saturn would be constantly looking at that house to make sure that that house prospers by the hard work, discipline, and many hours and years of labor in that house or any planet which is being aspected by this great Lord of Time. So remember, all the planets will aspect 7 houses away from themselves. we will draw upon the previous knowledge of the planets, the houses, and the ascendant signs to make a judgment on the effect of the aspect, as we can already see the endless combinations which are possible. This is the basic knowledge of the aspects. This is a lifelong journey and the learning never stops, although the basics is what we will need to master the craft. Now let us look into the zodiac aspects, which is another concept to add to our knowledge. Now the zodiac aspects are the aspects which occur between the zodiac signs themselves. These are purely based on the signs and not the planetary aspects. The sage Jaimini, who was a disciple of sage Vyasa, the author of the Mahabharata and other famous texts, made these aspects famous. Jaimini also authored the Jaimini Sutras as well as the Mimamsa Sutras. The Jaimini Sutras is also an astrology predictive text which looks very deeply into the signs and the degrees. This we will also unpack later in our learning. The zodiac sign aspects are as follows. So remember, we have learned about the movable, fixed, and mutable zodiac signs. You can go back to that lesson to refresh the memory. I will include the link on the video. There are 3 rules to keep in mind when using these zodiac aspects. The first rule is that the movable or cardinal signs will aspect the fixed signs except the fixed sign next to the movable sign. So an example would be the movable sign of Aries will aspect the fixed signs Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. Aries will not aspect the fixed sign of Taurus because Taurus is right next to the Aries zodiac sign. The second rule is that the fixed signs will aspect the movable or cardinal signs except the movable sign next to the fixed sign. So another example would be the fixed sign of Taurus will aspect the movable signs Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, and will not aspect the movable sign of Aries because Aries is right next to the fixed sign of Taurus. The third rule is easy. All the mutable signs will aspect each other. So the mutable sign Gemini will aspect Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. So here's a table you can reference and even make one of your own. Keep it next to you whenever you're looking at any chart. So planets will also aspect each other from these zodiac signs. An example of this would be if Saturn is in the zodiac sign of Aquarius, Saturn will also aspect any planet which lie in the zodiac signs of Aries, Cancer, and Libra. So both planetary aspects and zodiac sign aspects should be considered when looking at the birth chart. So this was the basic lesson on the aspects. So we can have a deeper knowledge of our chart from these aspects alone, of course including the knowledge we already have. Now let us look at the retrograde planet. Please subscribe to the channel, comment, like, and share. I'd be most grateful.